fire consume my lungs in my last life, while my own sister smiled, watching me burn. I swore if I ever opened my eyes again, I'd rewrite our destinies. Waking up on the day of our genetic inheritance ceremony, I knew exactly what to do. Take my crown, Izzy. See if it doesn't kill you. Gasps of air tore through my throat as I shot up from the nest mattress, my paws instinctively clawing at my own chest. There was no fire. There was no searing pain of the extraction drill piercing my sternum. Instead, I felt the cool, high-thread count Egyptian cotton sheets beneath my damp paw pads and smelled the distinct, sickeningly sweet scent of my sister's Chanel No. 5 lingering in the hallway. I was alive. I wasn't ash scattered across the ruins of the Hastings Biotech compound. I threw off the covers and stumbled toward the floor-to-ceiling mirror in my bedroom. Staring back at me was 19-year-old Clara Whiskerfield, unscarred, unburnt and unbroken. White fur, green eyes, long blonde mane flowing down her back. I checked my paw phone on the mahogany nightstand. The screen read July 18th, 2026. My breath hitched. It was the exact day of the awakening. In our world, the upper echelons of cat society didn't just inherit trusts and offshore accounts. We inherited genetic anomalies engineered and passed down from the primordial days of the Vanguard Genetics Institute. Today was the day my twin sister Izzy and I were to be presented with our family's 2 ancestral genes. In my previous life, I had fought tooth and nail for the Aurelian genome, the legendary Golden Pelt. I won it, proving my compatibility was superior. But my victory was short-lived. Izzy, consumed by jealousy, spent the next 3 years manipulating our father, poisoning my cream with heavy metals to destabilize my core, and finally conspiring with my fiancé, Leo Tomclaw, to strap me to a surgical table at Johns Hopkins Medical Center to extract it from my living body. They left me to burn in the incinerator wing to cover their tracks. But fate, or whatever cruel architect manages the universe, had given me a rewind button, and I wasn't about to play the same game twice. I dressed in a simple, understated navy dress, a stark contrast to the aggressive crimson I had worn in my past life, and walked downstairs. The Whiskerfield estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, was already bustling with private security and executives from Pfizer and Magna, all eager to see which twin would inherit the family's crown jewel. In the grand living room, my father, Ryder Whiskerfield, was swirling a glass of Macallan 18, chatting amiably with Dr. Mercer, the chief geneticist from the Mayo Clinic, who had been flown in to oversee the integration. Clara, my father said, his tone carrying that familiar, dismissive chill. Your sister has been waiting. Izzy stood by the marble fireplace, looking radiant in a white silk gown, a Cartier Panthère watch gleaming on her wrist. She gave me a sympathetic, practiced smile, the one she used for the cat razzie. I was worried you wouldn't come down, Clara. I know how anxious you get about these things. I'm perfectly fine, Izzy, I said, my voice shockingly steady. I didn't look at Leo, who was standing a few feet away, practically salivating at Izzy's display of wealth and grace. To think I had ever loved that spineless social climber made me nauseous. Dr. Mercer cleared his throat and gestured to the titanium briefcase on the center table. He keyed in the biometric passcode, and the case hissed open, releasing a cloud of liquid nitrogen. Inside lay 2 crystalline vials. The first was the Aurelian genome. It pulsed with a blinding incandescent gold light, radiating a terrifying amount of kinetic energy. It was raw power, dominance, and absolute biological supremacy. The Golden Pelt. The second vial contained something that looked entirely dead. It was a murky grayish-green sludge with what appeared to be a single shriveled black root suspended in the center. The verdant spore. Behind closed doors, the board of directors jokingly called it the useless weed. It had been passed down for 6 generations, and no one had ever successfully synchronized with it. Those who tried either felt nothing or suffered mild allergic reactions. It was considered a genetic dud, a useless relic of a failed experiment. The rules are simple, as dictated by your grandfather's will, Dr. Mercer announced, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. The twins may choose their inheritance. Should they desire the same core, a compatibility blood resonance test will determine the rightful owner. In my last life, Izzy had immediately reached for the Golden Pelt. I had challenged her, won the resonance test, and sealed my own death warrant. This time, as Izzy's paw hovered over the pulsing gold vial, she cast a sidelong glance at me, her eyes daring me to speak up, daring me to challenge her. I stepped forward. The room went dead silent. My father frowned, setting his scotch down. Leo subtly shifted his weight, ready to intervene if I made a scene. I reached past the golden vial, my claws hovering over the murky, pathetic little root. I choose the verdant spore, I said clearly. The silence that followed was deafening. Izzy's paw froze midair. Her meticulously crafted mask of sweet innocence slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing sheer, unadulterated confusion. "Are you sure, Clara?" Dr. Mercer stammered, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "The Aurelian genome is—" "I am aware of what it is, Doctor," I interrupted smoothly. "Izzy has always been the bright shining star of this family. It's only fitting she takes the Golden Pelt. I am perfectly content with the weed. Perhaps I can finally get my garden in order." My father let out a booming laugh, breaking the tension. "Well, I always said you lacked ambition, Clara, but I suppose there's a certain nobility in knowing your place. Very well, Izzy. The Aurelian genome is yours." Izzy snatched the golden vial as if she were terrified I would change my mind. She gripped it so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Thank you, sister," she whispered, her eyes flashing with a triumph that made me want to laugh out loud. She had no idea. She didn't know the secret I had uncovered in the agonizing months before my death in my previous life. The Aurelian genome wasn't just a power source. It was a highly aggressive, genetically engineered parasite. It granted immense strength, flawless beauty, and accelerated cognition. But it fed on the host's telomeres. It burned through a feline lifespan at a terrifying rate. By 25, the host would begin to experience complete cellular degradation. The only thing that could stabilize it, the only thing that could synthesize its radioactive decay, was the unique enzymatic structure produced by the useless weed. The verdant spore wasn't a weed at all. It was the World Tree Genome. It was the cradle of life, the ultimate regenerative baseline that Vanguard had lost the manual for decades ago. It just took excruciating patience to cultivate. I took the murky green vial, feeling the cold glass against my paw pad. "Enjoy the crown, Izzy," I thought, suppressing a dark smile. "It's going to melt right through your skull." 6 months later, Izzy became a modern-day demigod. The Aurelian genome synchronized flawlessly with her DNA, amplifying her physical and mental traits to super feline levels. She was suddenly gracing the cover of Forbes, hailed as the next step in feline evolution. She and Leo became New York's most insufferable power couple. Meanwhile, my father essentially exiled me. Disappointed by my pathetic lack of drive, he sent me to the family's neglected summer estate in the Hamptons. It was exactly what I needed. Cultivating the World Tree Genome was not passive. It was brutal. Every night I lay on the dusty wooden floor of the estate's massive overgrown greenhouse, shivering as the verdant spore tore through my nervous system, rebuilding me from the inside out. It felt like vines of razor wire were threading themselves through my veins. But by the 4th month, the agonizing pain gave way to something miraculous. I accidentally cut my paw pad on a rusted pruning shear. Before a drop of blood could hit the soil, the skin knitted back together, seamless and smooth. No scar, no pain. I discovered I could secrete a highly complex biorestorative enzyme from my paws when my heart rate dropped to a meditative state. I harvested it, synthesizing it in a makeshift lab I built in the basement. I tested it on dying plant life, then on a stray tomcat with advanced necrosis in its leg. The results were instantaneous and godlike, complete cellular regeneration. Knowing my father and Izzy would steal it if they found out, I reached out to Nolan Cross, an eccentric, disgraced former researcher from Johns Hopkins. I met Nolan in a dingy diner in Montauk. "What is this, Clara?" Nolan asked, his eyes bloodshot, eyeing the vial skeptically. "Redemption," I said simply. "I need you to patent this through a blind Delaware LLC. We'll call it Aegis Therapeutics. Start with localized tissue repair trials." He analyzed the data on his laptop right there in the booth. Within 10 minutes, he was weeping softly into his paws. This is impossible. The structural integrity of these proteins, it rewrites damaged DNA without aggressive immune rejection. "Where did you get this?" "I grew a weed," I replied. While Aegis Therapeutics began quietly accumulating patents, the cracks in Izzy's golden armor started to show. I saw it first on a live broadcast of a charity gala. She looked stunning, but as the camera zoomed in, I caught the micro-tremors in her left paw. When she smiled, there was a faint, almost imperceptible discoloration along her jawline, a webbing of gray veins she had desperately tried to conceal with heavy foundation. The parasite was getting hungry. The Aurelian genome was running out of external fuel and had begun feeding on her central nervous system. I knew the timeline. First the tremors, then blinding migraines that felt like glass shattering in the brain. Finally, paranoid delusions and organ failure. In my past life, this was when she realized she needed the weed's stabilizing properties, leading to my murder. But this time, I wasn't in her proximity, and I wasn't weak. My paw phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed Leo. "Clara!" His voice was tight, strained. "We need to talk. It's about Izzy. She's sick. The doctors at Mayo don't know what's happening. Her white blood cell count is plummeting and her cellular structure is degenerating. Dr. Mercer thinks the Aurelian genome is unstable. That's a tragedy, I said, pouring myself a cup of Earl Grey tea. But what does that have to do with me? I'm just tending to my garden. Mercer found old Vanguard files, Leo blurted out. He says the only way to synthesize the decay is with a counteragent. The verdant spore. The thing you took. Clara, we need you to come back to Greenwich immediately. We need to run some extractions on you to save her. Extractions? The word sent a phantom pain shooting through my chest, echoing the drill from my past life. They still thought they could just summon me and butcher me for parts. I'm afraid I can't do that, Leo, I said softly, staring out the window at the greenhouse where vibrant, unearthly flowers were blooming in the dead of winter. I'm expecting some important guests today. Clara, don't be stubborn. She is your sister. She's going to die if you don't give us the spore. Then I suggest she start making her funeral arrangements, I whispered and hung up the phone. I barely had time to set the phone down when the heavy iron gates of the Hamptons estate groaned open on the security monitors. 3 matte black SUVs with Hastings Biotech logos rolled up the driveway. They weren't here to ask nicely. I poured the rest of my Earl Grey into the sink, smoothed out the wrinkles in my linen trousers, and walked out the front door to greet my guests. 6 mercenaries stepped out. My father wasn't taking any chances. He wanted me dragged back to Johns Hopkins like a sacrificial lamb. The lead operative smirked, reaching for his tranquilizer rifle. Hard way it is. He never even managed to unclick the safety. The World Tree Genome wasn't just defensive. It granted me absolute mastery over my own cellular output and biological efficiency. My muscle fibers had been interwoven with microscopic hyperdense kinetic dampeners. Before his finger could twitch, I closed the 20-foot gap between us in a fraction of a second. I struck him in the solar plexus with an open paw. He folded instantly. Within 45 seconds, all 6 highly trained mercenaries were groaning on the gravel, completely incapacitated. I pulled the lead secure phone from his vest and dialed my father. Ryder, I said smoothly. Clara, what did you do to my mails? I'm sending them back to Greenwich in an Uber. The SUVs belong to me now. And listen to me very carefully. If you ever send anyone to my home again, I won't just break their bones. I will dismantle Hastings Biotech piece by piece. Keep Izzy far away from me. I crushed the phone in my bare paw. The real war was being fought on the stock market. Over the next 3 weeks, Aegis Therapeutics emerged from the shadows. Nolan, operating as my brilliant eccentric frontman, finalized the FDA fast-track approvals for our flagship product, the Genesis Serum. The clinical trials were published in the New England Journal of Medicine, and the medical world exploded. We had cured advanced stage necrosis. We had regenerated severed spinal cords in primate subjects. On a Tuesday morning, the opening bell rang at the New York Stock Exchange and Aegis Therapeutics went public. Within 4 hours, Aegis stock surged by 800%. But that wasn't the best part. The Genesis Serum directly targeted the exact market demographics that Hastings Biotech relied upon. By closing bell, Hastings Biotech stock had plummeted by 42%. It was a financial bloodbath. My burner phone buzzed. It was Nolan. Clara, we did it. Goldman Sachs just upgraded us to a strong buy. But there's something else. I just got an urgent, highly confidential email from Ryder Hastings. He wants to meet the CEO of Aegis Therapeutics. He's begging for a buyout. He says his daughter is dying of a rare genetic decay, and he believes our serum is the only thing that can stabilize her. I smiled, a cold, predatory grin spreading across my face. Set the meeting, Nolan. Book the penthouse conference room at the Plaza Hotel for Friday. Tell him the CEO will be there in person. It's time to see my family. The penthouse conference room at the Plaza overlooked Central Park, bathed in the crisp golden light of late afternoon. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, wearing a tailored charcoal gray Tom Ford suit, my fur groomed, tail swishing calmly. I looked nothing like the timid, neglected twin they had banished to the Hamptons. At exactly 4 p.m., the heavy mahogany doors swung open. My father entered first, looking 10 years older. Behind him was Leo, looking nervous and sweaty. And then there was Izzy. My breath hitched, not out of pity, but out of sheer shock at the devastation the Aurelian genome had wrought. She was confined to a customized wheelchair, wrapped in thick cashmere blankets. The golden aura that used to radiate from her fur had turned into a sickening jaundiced yellow. Dark necrotic veins crawled up her neck, disappearing into her thinning, brittle fur. She was shaking violently. Nolan stood by the projector. Mr. Hastings, thank you for coming. Mr. Cross, my father barked. Let's skip the pleasantries. Where's your CEO? I am prepared to offer a 40% stake in Hastings Biotech in exchange for exclusive licensing of the Genesis serum and immediate unrecorded medical intervention for my daughter. I'm afraid Hastings Biotech stock isn't worth the paper it's printed on anymore, Ryder, I said, turning away from the window and stepping into the light. The reaction was instantaneous. My father staggered back. Clara, what are you doing here? Leo's jaw dropped. Izzy let out a raspy, agonizing wheeze, lifting her trembling, gray-veined paw to point at me. You. Hello, sister, I said, pulling out the plush, leather chair at the head of the table and sitting down, crossing my legs. I must say, the Golden Pelt doesn't suit you. You look terrible. You're the CEO, my father whispered, horrified. The useless weed. It wasn't a dud. It was the World Tree. Bingo, I said, tapping my manicured claws against the oak table. And while you spent the last year parading Izzy around like a show pony, ignoring the parasite eating her brain, I synthesized the ultimate biological cure. Aegis Therapeutics is mine. I own the patents. I own the serum. And as of this morning, my aggressive short selling of your stock means I effectively own your company's debt. Leo suddenly dropped to his knees beside my chair. I didn't want any of this. I always loved you, Clara. You have to believe me. Save her, so we can take over the company together. I looked down at the tomcat who had strapped me to an operating table in my previous life. Without a word, I raised my foot and kicked him squarely in the chest. He tumbled backward onto the plush carpet. Keep your pathetic mouth shut, Leo. You are nothing but a parasite, just like the one in Izzy's blood. Izzy began to sob, thick black tears leaking from her eyes. Clara, please. It hurts so much. I'm sorry. I'll give you everything. You already gave me everything when you took the Aurelian genome, I said coldly. But I'm not a monster. I can save you. The Genesis serum can stabilize the decay and strip the Aurelian parasite from your DNA entirely. You will live. My father let out a choked sob of relief. Thank God. Clara, name your price. Anything. I slid a thick stack of legal documents across the table. Here are my terms. First, Ryder, you step down as CEO of Hastings Biotech immediately. You sign over your remaining shares to Aegis Therapeutics. Second, you transfer the deeds to the Greenwich estate, the London townhouse, and the corporate jets to my name. Third, Izzy, you will receive the serum, but the extraction process will completely neutralize your genetic compatibility. You will be stripped of the Vanguard inheritance. You will be ordinary, powerless, immortal. You're taking everything, my father whispered. You're leaving us with nothing. I am leaving you with your lives, I corrected him sharply, my eyes flashing with the memory of the incinerator flames, which is far more mercy than you would have ever shown me. Izzy let out a guttural, desperate cry. Sign it, Dad. Sign it. I'm dying. With a defeated, broken sigh, Ryder Whiskerfield signed his name on the dotted lines, surrendering his empire, his legacy, and his pride to the daughter he had discarded. I took the signed documents and tossed a single small glass vial containing a glowing green liquid onto the table. It rolled and came to a stop against Izzy's trembling paw tips. Drink up, sister, I whispered, standing from the table. Enjoy your long, painfully average life. I didn't look back as I walked out of the penthouse. The heavy oak doors clicked shut behind me, sealing my family in the ruin of their own making. I stepped into the private elevator. The descent was smooth, silent, and triumphant. I had rewritten my destiny, turning a useless weed into an empire and burning their golden crown to ashes. I was Clara Whiskerfield, and I was finally free.